Hi again, and welcome to our fall preview show as we come to you from the base of the Flatirons. The 123rd season of college football for the University of Colorado is about to commence on September 1st at Sports Authority Field at Mile High for the Rocky Mountain Showdown as the Buffaloes open up the season against the rival Rams. I'm Mark Johnson, Sports Director of 850 KOA Radio and the play-by-play voice of the Buffaloes, joined for the show by a guy who is maybe outside of my partner Larry Zimmer, maybe even David Platty, has seen as much CU football over the last 30 years as anybody, that being B.G. Brooks, the contributing editor to CUBuffs.com. B.G., another season upon us, new coaching staff, a lot of newness around this program. What's been your takeaway so far through camp?
Well, I like the way that things are organized. I like the attention to detail. I like the way the team has conducted itself, and the coaching staff has pushed them. It's been a breath of fresh air, really, to see things go on as they have during August, and I'm hoping it translates into September.
Far too frequently over the course of my 9 years on the job, this will be year number 10 calling the Buffaloes, we've been talking about a new coaching regime. Mike MacIntyre comes in, 25th coach in Colorado history. I think he's laid a nice foundation. He always talks about his 4 Fs. It appears the team's kind of bought into that.
Yeah, I think they have, and I think they've bought into most everything that this coaching staff has introduced to them since MacIntyre was hired back in December. It's been a good spring practice for them. That carried into summer workouts for the players, player-run practices, and I saw it really translate into August. I think it's been a productive camp.
Those 4 Fs, foundation, family, future, and football. And maybe the number one job that Mike MacIntyre and his new staff have to attend to is maybe changing the culture, maybe the mindset. That's 6 inches between the ears, as they say, for this football team. There's been a lot of losing for the guys on this roster so far.
There has been, and I've heard over the years so many coaches come in and talk about changing the culture. And I've seen it work on a number of occasions. I've seen it not work on several. But I think this foundation is being laid, and I think Mike MacIntyre and his staff have done what they intended to do in changing the mindset here. Of course, you're not going to see it right away. You're going to see some things that, some wrinkles that have to be worked out, but I think by and large there has been a change.
Like I do, you get the questions as well from fans, whether it be via email or just when we're out here at practice. What's the takeaway? What are we noticing so far? You talked about tempo. There's an attention to detail with this staff so far, but tempo is the one thing when you're out here practice you really notice that there's a very precise approach, I think, to how they go through practice, and how it manifests itself is a lot of repetitions for a lot of guys.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One of the things that you notice right away if you're out here long enough is that he has 2 full practices in effect going on 2 fields. He's got the 1s and 2s working together on one field, the 3s and 4s on another. That doesn't leave a lot of time for guys to be standing around watching. And just that by itself, I think, increases the tempo of what they're doing. Plus, it's a conditioner. Players have told me that with the lack of time standing around and the fast pace, it's really an extension of what they do in the conditioning program, in the weight room and thereafter.
Yeah, using the altitude to the Buffs' advantage is kind of the concept here. At over a mile high when teams come in, a high pace to practice, increase the pace of games, and you hope to wear teams out a little bit. Another unique, I think, aspect of this is that Mike MacIntyre has named his captains already. There's 6 of them, Butch. I mean, that's a very high number. You don't traditionally see that on a football team.
No, you don't. That's the first time in memory of me being around CU football that I've seen 6 captains named. But I think the thought process there was, let's identify as many good leaders as we can on this team and give them the reins. And I think that's what he's done, and I hope it's going to work out for him.
Well, game in, game out, there will be 4 captains who will take the field for the coin toss, so they'll obviously rotate a little bit. And by the way, if you're wondering, on offense, it's Jack Harris, the offensive tackle, quarterback Connor Wood, wide receiver Paul Richardson, obviously, and the defensive side, linebacker Derek Webb, defensive end Shadera Uzo-Deribe, and linebacker Paul Vigo. Well, as we work our way through our fall preview show, we're going to look at different positions. And we'll start out with a very important position in this Pistol offense, that being the running backs. Right now, let's hear from position coach Clayton Adams.
You know, I expect to see some versatility and hopefully 3 or 4 guys that we feel really comfortable putting on the field. I think that each of them bring a unique skill set between Christian and Tony and Josh and Malcolm, Dante, and then the other thing is there's a lot of them out here, a lot of young guys, and some of the young guys are doing a good job too. So before it's all said and done, we'll see which of those guys are ready to go and which of the older guys are ready to kind of take their spot.
Well, Clayton Adams certainly has some good raw material to work with. He was a big back a year ago, started his career here at CU as a fullback, became a tailback, and Butch, we're talking about Christian Powell. It appears he's the front runner at that position right now.
Exactly. I think based on what he did last year, what he showed thus far during spring and in camp, yeah, he's a big back. What people might not know is that when Christian Powell visited CU on his official visit out of high school, he weighed almost 260 pounds. Now, that's a big running back. He was a fullback at the time, but he's down to about 229 now. He says he feels faster, he feels stronger, much like a lot of the players on the team. So, yeah, he's a good place to start at tailback. I think you're going to see a change of pace with Tony Jones. He's a smaller back, quicker. Josh Ford also fits into that category. But I think Clayton Adams has got some good guys to work with.
700 yards and had that big game against Sac State last year to Christian Powell. I think when you look at this new offensive system, the pistol system that we've heard so much about with Mike McIntyre as he brings in here, does that play into a running back's ability to run the football? Can teams run effectively? Obviously, Mike McIntyre thinks so. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think they can. I think one of the things that the pistol is going to be based on is multiple looks and a lot of diversity and a lot of misdirection, and I think that plays into the running game. Now, of course, how much that depends on the guys up front, but I think the pistol is going to help the offensive line also. Tony
Jones, we saw a lot from him last year. Josh Ford has been a guy, of course, out of Mullen High School in Denver, who has impressed many times in fall camp and even spring ball, but never has made a great impact on the field. So we'll see how much he plays into the mix this year. We talk about Clayton Adams. He also deals with the tight ends. That's a spot that under John Embry, the former tight end, you thought there might have been some depth there over the short 2 years that John was here, but there's a little thinness in that position, I guess. So when you talk about the tight end, you talk about Kyle Slavin. He's the guy that probably right now holds that number one spot.
Yeah, Kyle is the guy coming back who has the most experience, no doubt. And the way that Mike McIntyre and Clayton Adams worked at San Jose State, the tight end was an integral part of their offense. And Clayton told me that in a high percentage of San Jose State's formations, they were using 2 or more tight ends. So that's going to be a carryover for CU. And you're hoping that behind Kyle Slavin, you're going to get some depth there. You're going to get guys like Scooter Fernandez who can step up, and a number of other guys who've been on the roster. But that is a position where there is a lack of experience, and some guys are going to have to come through.
Yeah, Alex Wood and Scott Fernandez, or Scooter, as we lovingly call him, they caught a touchdown a year ago, have played. They're upperclassmen, but aren't deep in experience at that position. They got some big shoes to fill. Even though he was not a tight end for a long time, Nick Costa now with the Oakland Raiders certainly became a dynamic position, or a guy in that position a year ago. And so I think a lot of question marks, even though it is a big part of the offense, this pistol offense that Mike McIntyre runs, a lot of questions going into this season with that position.
No doubt about that. I think what Nick Costa developed into toward the tail end of last year really gives a glimpse of what he might have been had he been at that position for his entire career at CU. So, yeah, big shoes to fill. Guys have got to come through.
Certainly when you talk about the University of Colorado football program, linebacker has been a great position historically. The defensive coordinator, Kent Baer, is a guy that also coaches the linebackers. As we turn our attention to that position on defense, let's hear from Coach Baer.
Well, I see a big improvement from last spring. I think these kids worked hard in the summer, and I've seen a lot of improvement. We've had, 8 or 9 practices now, and there's a lot of improvement so far. We just got to continue to go. There's a lot of little things, the fundamental things we got to continue to work out. But as an entire defense and linebackers, we are improving.
Well, when we're talking linebackers, let's start with the seniors, and they're both captains, Paul Vico and Derek Webb. By the way, Derek Webb, one of 6 Buffs ever to be a 2-time captain on the defensive side. And I guess they're going to be the anchors. In particular, Derek Webb, I think, is poised to have a big senior year.
Derek Webb is a player. He might be, according to a couple of scouts that I've talked to, kind of a in-between guy for the NFL, or maybe not big enough at that position for the NFL. But they've told me that a college player, he's terrific. And I look for that kind of season from Derek this year, and I think Derek expects that of himself. He's an interesting guy. He's one of the few Tennesseans that CU has recruited and has really done well. So that holds a special place in my heart.
Go back to his southern roots there for a moment. Paul Vigo's another guy that probably does not project to the next level, but he's a high motor guy and a guy that seems to end up around the football.
I really like Paul Vigo. He moved from safety to linebacker. Getting him a little nearer the ball, I think, and using his speed was a great move a couple of years ago. So Paul is fast enough, I think, to do what Ken Bayer wants from his linebackers. He's a tough guy. He's from New Jersey. And, there again, like Derek Webb, not a lot of guys show up on the CU roster from those two states.
Well, some of the other guys are going to certainly be in the mix. Brady Day, the Mullen product, Lowell Williams, KT Tuamalo, Woodson Greer is going to be in there. Addison Gillum is a guy that CU fans may not know that name all that much. He's a young player that was recruited to San Jose State by then San Jose head coach Mike McIntyre and decided to come here when Mac came here. He's a playmaker.
He is a playmaker. He's the guy that Kent Bayer says, keep an eye on him for the future because he's going to be a player, and he might be a player as soon as this year. At least that's what they're hoping. He wears number 44. I think Jordan Dizon wore number 44. Right. I think Jordan Dizon holds the record for freshman tackles at CU. So, maybe the stars are aligning there for Addison Gillum to break Dizon's record.
Well, if he can live up to his predecessor, number 44, that'd be quite a statement because, of course, Jordan ended up being the Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 12 one year. Let's transition to maybe the deepest position on the CU football team, that being, and surprising to say this considering where it's been in recent years, but wide receiver.
I'm actually loving the receiver position. I feel really good at this position, and I got more room to work at this position, so I really like the receiver position.
Well, when you talk CU wide receivers, maybe the biggest addition might be an old hand here for the Buffs. Paul Richardson. Boy, it is good to see number 6 back in the football field after missing all of last year.
Paul can do so many things for this offense. I know that Brian Lindgren, the offensive coordinator, has talked about getting Paul back, being able to stretch the field. He's a game changer. The big question or the big issue for Paul is going to be, can he stay healthy? Yeah. And, by all accounts, he's done that through camp. They've Paul has designated some days where, he's going to take it a little bit easier, and the coaches are fine with that. And, the coaches say we're all for it. He's got to be in the lineup.
When you come back from that severe of an injury, I always wonder what are you going to be like in the wake of it. But I had a chance to chat, in fact, here on CUBuffs.com at Media Day with Paul Richardson. He said he felt as quick and strong as he ever has, maybe more so. So in his mind anyway, he's better than he was prior to the injury. Could it really be that we're talking about depth at the wide receiver position? I mean, over the course of my 9 years here, that has been a position of concern, it seems, each and every year. Right now, that would seem to be as deep a position as there is in this football team.
Yeah, as strange as it sounds, that might turn into a real position of strength for the Buffs in 2013. Troy Walters, the wide receivers coach, whose background is just immaculate as a wide receiver, says that this could be the year that CU gets back on the map as a school that really has some good wide receivers. And I think that statement coming from him certainly bears some credibility. So
when you talk about the depth in this, D.D. Goodson has moved to a slot guy, former running back, has some very good speed. Jeffrey Thomas was a big young man we talked about last year at this point in time. Then he went home with some family issues, has come back. Big body on the other side, although he's dealt with some injuries here. And then there's some youth on this team as well in that wide receiver corps.
Yeah, Devin Ross is the guy that Coach McIntyre mentions as one of a couple of freshmen who could play right away and will play right away. The other freshman to keep an eye on, Elijah Dunston, big frame, good hands. Bryce Bobo, same thing. So they've recruited well at that position, and with the guys coming back, Nelson Spruce, Tyler McCulloch, throw Keenan Candy in there. He's got speed. You've got some guys that I think can make this position a really strong one, a really deep one.
And we haven't even talked about the junior college transfer. Number 83, his first name is Wes. He weighs 83 like Wes Welker does for the Broncos. Many are making that comparison. But he's a guy that may find himself in the mix here a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. He's had a good August camp, and he's turned some heads. He can catch the ball.
From the guys who catch the ball to the guys that cover the ball, the secondary. There are two coaches, in fact, under Mike McIntyre's staff, coaching that position.
We're all improving every day, and the experience is there. We're not young anymore as far as the DB core, and you could tell it's much improved from last year.
Well, Charles Clark and Andy LaRusso are these secondary coaches, and Butch, it's kind of interesting because Mike McIntyre is an old secondary coach as well. That's kind of a crowded area coaching-wise, and when you consider where that area was for the football team a year ago for the Buffs. I guess they can use that much help.
Yeah, maybe a crowd is a good thing, lending some expertise back there. Mike McIntyre, Andy LaRussa says Mike McIntyre's heart is really in the secondary. So McIntyre is certainly no stranger to the DB meeting room. I think he probably shows up there as much as he does anywhere else. But having two secondary coaches, I think, is a very good thing. Andy LaRussa concentrates on the corners, Charles Clark on the safeties, and Mike McIntyre wherever he wants to concentrate. So it's a good thing.
In all fairness for that secondary a year ago, I mean, each level of the defense kind of plays off the other, so the struggles in the back end were a reflection of the struggles on the front end as well. When you look at the talent, though, that is returning here, Kenneth Crowley, a very good place to start. Yuri Wright, Greg Henderson, Marquise Mosley, a safety. There is some talent for these coaches to work with.
No doubt, and you got to remember that last year, with the exception of Greg Henderson, these were freshmen. They were breaking into a league that loves to throw the ball, that is very proficient in throwing the ball, and these guys were thrown into the fire, learning by experience, and not all the experiences were good. In fact, most of them weren't. But I expect for that reason these guys to step up in 2013, learn from what they didn't do or did do in 2012, and be better.
When you look at a guy who was greatly missed, I think, each of his last couple of years, Parker Orms, a former Wheatridge standout, led, in fact, the Farmers to a 4A state championship. He is one of those guys in the back of a defense that I think is a good leader back there. He's an alignment guy, but he hasn't been able to get over the injury bug. He's done so far during fall camp, but really you think the last couple of years, every coaching staff has talked about when Parker Orms is out there, we're better on the back end.
No doubt. And Parker realizes that staying injury-free is a goal right now, getting into the opener and going through that injury-free, going through September and the rest of the year. And if that can happen, I think the secondary will really benefit.
As we look at the young players in each one of these positions, if you talk secondary, you got to talk about Chidobe Awuzie. He has made a name for himself so far in this camp.
Yeah, they call him Cheeto, and he's been a player. He's been playing at corner and at nickel. He'll see the field a lot at both positions, and from the practices I've watched, there's not much that gets past him. He's there where he should be when the ball is thrown. He's a very good freshman.
Well, if you're going to have success as a football team, you've got to have a good, strong offensive line, and the Buffaloes have some big shoes to fill.
We really know each other well. We know where each other's going to be. We know all the calls. We know the offense very well, so I think we're gelling pretty well.
Well, it was not a good number from a year ago. The Buffaloes did surrender 50 sacks last season, so struggles in that offensive front. Butch, a couple of things. The pistol offense should alleviate some of that, but that offensive line has got to get better, and there's some big shoes to fill. David Bakhtiari looks to be the starting left tackle for the Green Bay Packers in the NFL, and Alex Lewis decided to transfer elsewhere. What do you see in this offensive line?
Well, I see some guys that can play. I see some holes that are going to have to be filled. I think there are guys very capable of filling those holes. Gus Handler is a very good center. He is a Remington Award preseason watch list candidate. Daniel Munyer at a guard or a center. Gary Bernardi wants three interior guys who can play all three positions, and that's what they've been striving for in camp. So there are guys there that are very capable, and they have to play to those capabilities.
Consider for a second the last two starting left tackles for the Colorado Buffaloes will be starting tackles in the National Football League. Nate Solder, New England, David Bakhtiari with Green Bay. Jack Harris, he's a big body, but he's got to move over to that left side now and start protecting the quarterback's blind side.
Yeah, and that's a big jump for Jack. I think he certainly can do it. Jack thinks he can do it. And one of the things you mentioned earlier about the pistol, from players I've talked to and from coaches, they think that the pistol is a little, it could be beneficial to the O-line because of the zone blocking. And Gary Bernardi says that in reading your blocks and seeing who to block is as important as the block itself. So, guys getting lined up right, guys targeting the right players, that's all very important for this team.
I mentioned Nate Solder a moment ago. A few years ago, ESPN did a list of its biggest physical freaks in college football. Nate was one of those guys. He certainly was a physical specimen. In that same vein, let's talk about Stefan Nembot. They don't make many that look like that. He'll be starting on the right side at tackle, and he is a specimen.
He's a tremendously talented physical specimen.
But raw athlete.
Very raw athlete. Everything that Stefan does is new, and I'm talking about just being in the country. He's new to the country. He's new to college life. He's new to practically everything, football included. But there's not a guy probably on a college campus in America on a football team who has any more raw ability than Stefan Nembot.
Yeah, somewhere in the 6'6.5" range, about 330 pounds. And as Butch says, every snap's new to him, but he's been learning quickly, and the curve has been outstanding. Let's flip over to the defensive side of the football. That was an area a few days ago. Mike McIntyre, a little gathering, said he is very proud of it. He's got a very good and experienced coach there in former NFL standout Jim Jeffcoat.
They're all improving. They're working hard and trying to go in the right direction. You have the usual suspects in Nate Bonsu and Chidera. You also have the young guys that are coming along, and Josh Tupou, Justin Solis, Tyler Hennington, and some guys that haven't played a lot, and Judah Parker and Poston, that are starting to understand what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, under Mike McIntyre and Jim Jeffcoat, when it comes to the defensive line, less is apparently more. They are going to be a leaner, meaner defensive line under this coaching staff. Talk a bit about that. You wrote about that on CUBus.com. Mike McIntyre wanted a slimmed-down defensive front.
Yeah, he looks at the league that CU is playing in, the Pac-12. He sees the speed pretty much across the board in the Pac-12, and he saw guys last season that really couldn't keep up. So when he came in here, there were mandates issued to practically, I'd say 3/4 of the defensive line to lose weight. And these guys had bi-weekly weigh-ins Monday, Friday from January through August. Players were given target weights, and by most accounts, they've met them. I know that Josh Tupou has played last year at about 325. He's going to be down in the 305, 300 range this fall. Judah Parker, a defensive end, weighed 270 last year. He's down to 250 right now. That's a 20-pound loss. So I think guys across the board have bought into that. Dave Foreman has done a terrific job in the sports performance category. And, you're going to see a leaner bunch of buffs running around. And, the thought is, can they keep up? And I think they can.
If a defense is going to be successful, you've got to make opposing quarterbacks a little uncomfortable, which means you've got to put pressure on them. Chidera Uzo-Diribe would appear to be that kind of guy. He's got all the physical schools. Is this to be a breakout year for him, do you think?
Well, Jim Jeffcoat told me a couple of days ago that for CU to have the kind of year defensively that they want to have, then Chidera has to take it to the next level. And Chidera knows that. He had 7 quarterback sacks last year. He needs to hit that or go beyond this year. He can be a guy who can be very disruptive to an offense, and Jeffcoat thinks that he's going to have several other guys that fit in that category also.
And there is some experience interiorly. Nate Bonsu, who's one of those guys that seems like he's been around here forever. Josh Tupou, the second-year player. Tyler Hennington is in the mix. Kirk Poston. So there's some guys that have played some football for the Buffaloes up front.
Justin Solis, throw him in there. You've got some guys that can play. You've got some guys that I think, as we talked about, are slimmed down, are more capable of playing well this year, and I think that's going to happen.
When you think of special teams for the Colorado Buffaloes, those kicking positions would appear to be pretty solid at this point in time with a couple of young players. But what about the returners? Let's talk special teams. And the special teams coach for the Buffaloes is Toby Ninas.
This year, very, very excited. Obviously, it's my first year as a Buff, but we had some very talented specialists, very talented punter in Dara O'Neill, a very gifted snapper in Ryan Iverson, and a couple of really, really fine kickers, Will Oliver and Justin Castor. Those guys are working very hard, and we also have a bunch of depth at the specialist position. We have a number of position players that we anticipate to be very good core teams guys. Isaac Archuleta, Tony Jones, Harrison Hunter, just a number, a lot more than that. Richard Yates, just a large number of guys that we really anticipate being able to make a big impact for us this year on teams.
Well, for Toby Ninas, it's not a big mystery as to who's going to be kicking the football. Will Oliver punting the football, Dara O'Neill. Those two positions are pretty solid right now.
Yeah, they are. The kicking position that probably is unsettled right now is who's going to kick off, and that'll either be Justin Castor or Will Oliver. Both have kicked the ball very well in camp. Will Oliver told me that he's increased his range in both kicking off and in field goals. Justin Castor can kick it deep. Will Oliver he's tweaked his style a little bit just to get some more distance, and that's working out. And the other thing that's, I think, unique, at least to CU, about special teams is that you have a guy in Toby Ninus who is solely a special teams coach. He doesn't share time on the field with any other position. So that's got to be a benefit to the special teamers.
We just found out here recently ahead of the Rocky Mountain Showdown that Nelson Spruce looks to be the punt return man. A little up in the air still for kickoff return. Both of those areas where the Buffaloes were very deficient a year ago.
Yeah, Marquise Mosley, I think, has proven he can be a good kickoff return guy. So he's probably one of the guys in the mix, if not the guy. So we'll see how that turns out. Probably a game day decision.
And finally, last but not least, the quarterback position. And handling that is the offensive coordinator, Brian Lindgren.
I've been pretty pleased with the quarterbacks through the first week of camp. I was really pleased with how they came out of the summer. Connor Wood kind of picked up where he left off at the end of spring. I thought he did a tremendous job of leading the team kind of through the summer. And you could tell we were pretty crisp the first week, and you could tell guys had been working over the summer.
Well, when it comes to the starting quarterback position, head coach Mike McIntyre has been vague leading up to the Rocky Mountain Showdown, and maybe for good reason, Butch. I mean, there are 4 guys in the mix: Connor Wood, Gerke, Sefo Lufau, Stevie Joe Dorman. It would appear at the time that you and I are taping this that Connor Wood is the man for the job.
He went into August camp with his name penciled in, as the leader at that position. Frankly, I haven't seen anything, and coaches haven't told me anything to suggest that that's not the case now. But until Mike McIntyre makes it official, then we'll be as Mike McIntyre has been and be vague about it.
Jordan Gerke, the junior college transfer, has been impressive at times, however.
He has. Mike McIntyre was told by Jordan's junior college coach to be that he thought Jordan was going to be one of the top 2 or 3 JC quarterbacks in the country this year. So had he stayed at his junior college. So yeah, he throws the ball really well. That's one of the things that Rick Neuheisel commented on when he was out at practice several weeks ago with the Pac-12 Network, how well Gerke throws the ball. But the same could be said of, I think, Connor Wood. Sefo throws the ball well. Stevie Joe has had his moments in camp.
Yeah. Connor Wood, the last couple of years, in fact, when you think to the last year under John Embry, it appeared they were trying to give him that job. He didn't fully take it over, and of course Jordan Webb ended up being the starting quarterback. Webb, by the way, still around the program, coming off an injury. But this would seem to be the best opportunity for Connor Wood. If he ever is going to be a starting quarterback at this level of college football, this is his opportunity.
No doubt, and Connor knows that. I think he's embraced the situation. He has been a leader throughout the player-run practices in the summer. He's gained a lot of confidence. He's gained a lot of respect from his teammates. The question is now, if he's the guy, he needs to do it starting September 1st.
And I know there's been a lot of talk and hype around Sefo Lufau, the freshman from the Spokane, Washington area. Many CU fans look at him as the future of this position. He's been awful impressive. And a big-bodied quarterback, the kind of prototype you look for around college football right now.
Exactly. Big body, very athletic. He has picked up the offense, I think, fairly well for a guy just walking into it. So the future looks very, very good for him. The future might be now.
Do you think this is the kind of season where we may see, barring an injury, let's say there's no injuries in there, but a year where we see multiple quarterbacks again for the Buffaloes?
Well, it could be. I think that the great hope here is that one quarterback takes it on September 1, runs with it, and leaves no doubt that he's the guy, and he's the guy who should be playing every Saturday. So that's the way I think the coaching staff is going into it. Best case scenarios, it's always good for a freshman to redshirt. I think this group of coaches would like to do that with Sefo, but it may not turn out that way. And they're going to play the best guy that gives them a chance to be successful.
BG, final thoughts here on our fall preview show. Hope springs eternal, and every time a season gets underway, everyone's optimistic with a new coaching staff. There's a renewed optimism. What do you think about the Buffaloes in 2013?
Well, I see them being better. I see them being better for a number of reasons. I like, as we've talked about, the organization. I like the attention to detail. I like the up-tempo. This is not an up-tempo offense in name only. These guys really mean it this time. And I think that's going to benefit Colorado football. I think everything I've seen about Mike McIntyre and his staff suggests that the needle is moving forward.
Well, there certainly is a lot of energy around this program right now as we get set for the Rocky Mountain Showdown. September 1st at Sports Authority Field at Mile High. Last year, we remember, it was a 22-17 victory for the Rams over the Buffaloes. We'll have the broadcast, of course, on our Clear Channel stations. We begin our pregame at 2 o'clock on AM 760, and then to pick up the broadcast over at 850 KOA following our Rockies coverage. It's a 4 p.m. game at Sports Authority Field at Mile High. For B.G. Brooks of CUBuffs.com, I'm Mark Johnson of 850 KOA Radio. And remember, for everything Colorado, go to CUBuffs.com.